Hey students. So we are now halfway through the semester, which is a little nuts to believe, but here we are. And hope everything is going okay with all of you and that you're holding up okay. I know this is challenging, but it seems like you guys have been doing a great job with keeping up with the readings. So good job, pat on the back. And I'm going to talk about week 7 now. So a few things. One is hopefully you saw in Slack that we've changed the format a little bit of the reading journals and the comments. Since most people seem to be doing their journaling on the weekend, there wasn't a lot of time to read other people's journals and post comments. So now journals are going to be due by Sunday night, as usual. And then you're going to have till the following Wednesday to post your comments. So today's Tuesday, so that'll be tomorrow, Wednesday the 7th, Wednesday the 7th. And we'll keep doing it that way for the rest of the semester, which means you won't be posting any comments on any readings we do in the last week. Next thing is our papers. So by now, hopefully you've all had your theses approved. If not, let's keep working on that in the Slack, but we gotta get moving on it. Also posted outlines, which I'm gonna review and sign off on. And you should be heading over to work on your rough drafts, which will be due Sunday night. We will workshop them next week. So what that means is that you'll be assigned to small groups of people to read each other's papers and give feedback on the Slack. Although if you can find a time to meet on Zoom call, that might be even better. So whichever way works for you guys should be fine. So you'll get your small group assignments next week for that. For now, you're working on the rough draft. We still have the regular weekly stuff to do. So there's some readings, which by Hyde, Joyce, Yates, and Carlton. You'll write journal entries on those. Carlton, I'm going to make optional. So you actually only have to write 3 journal entries, 1 for each author. There's going to be a fair number of little readings because Yates, for example, you're reading 3 poems. So you just need to pick one of those to write a response to. Okay, I want to talk about the different readings a little bit right now. So Hyde should be pretty straightforward. The necessity for de-anglicizing Ireland is just an essay about what happened to Irish names and under colonization and the pain that caused. As you're reading this, you might look ahead to, at the end of the semester, we're doing a personal history project. And so you could think about, was there any way in which your family's name was affected or changed by either colonization or other historical events? Even just immigration. For example, in Sri Lankan culture, there's no surname. So if my dad had had sons in Sri Lanka, he would have had a different last name. There's sort of a complicated structure. Because we came to America, probably if he'd had sons, which he didn't, he would have just used the American naming system. So that's one example. Not a particularly violent one. Some of the colonial examples are more violent, but thinking about these larger effects on your individual family. In Joyce, you're reading a short story called Araby from Dubliners. And in this story, it's about a young man in Dublin. And probably the main thing that's helpful for you to know is that Joyce got a lot of flack from other writers and other people of his time because he was writing in English. And Irish nationalists were unhappy that one of their great writers was not writing in Irish. And so he was sort of contending with that. At the same time, he was really frustrated because he did have sympathy to the cause of Irish independence. And he was really frustrated with his fellow Dubliners who he thought were, he had all sorts of criticisms about them. And you see some of that in the books. You see in the story even, you see the uncle who is pretty clearly meant to be drunken. So you can kind of look and see if you can figure out, where do you see the signs of the uncle's drunkenness in this story. It's never explicitly put out, but it's fairly clear. And the young man who is trying to buy this girl he likes, a present, is first, can't afford it because the English that have set up this fair that he's going to have charged so much for the train fare and the admittance fee that he doesn't have enough money left to buy her a present. And he's so at the end of the story, sorry, I'm kind of giving it away a little bit, but I want you to have this in mind as you go. Think about what it does to his masculinity as a young Irish man who is living under colonialism, and what the English have done to him, even in things like the English girl who is working the fair and is sort of laughing, and how he feels about that. So, and then in the larger context, you could think about, Joyce's frustration with what he saw as the failings of his Irish compatriots. And, if they were going to fight for revolution, then maybe he thought that they should be more disciplined about it, perhaps. So all of that. The poems are by Yeats. Yeats is one of the great poets of the world, I think. The first one, An Irish Airman Foresees His Death, is very straightforward. It's a short poem, and the main thing to think about is that the Irish were forced to fight for the English in the war. And there are lines in the poem that talk about how, I'm not fighting for my own people. The next poem is The Second Coming. And this one, honestly, is a very important, but also very complex poem. So normally we'd have a long discussion in class about it. Since we can't do that, I think the main thing I'd like you to think about as you're reading this is Yeats thought that the world moved in 2,000-year cycles. And he expected in the Bible, at the 2,000 years after the birth of Christ, is supposed to be the end of the world, and I don't know how to put, and so in the book of Revelations, all kinds of terrible things happen when the world is about to end. And this poem is about that. It's about the second coming of Christ. It is, here's Yeats, who's just lived through a war, seen many of the young men killed. And it's, this world war is like nothing he's ever seen before, right? Nothing the world has ever seen before. And so it's not surprising that he would maybe think the end of the world was coming. And he's struggling with that, and, what that's going to mean for him and everyone around him. And then the last poem is honestly probably a little tricky to understand, because it's written in a sort of mythological mode, Cuchulainn's Fight with the Sea. And it's about an ancient Irish mythological figure, Cuchulainn, who's sort of like Paul Bunyan or Robin Hood. He's sort of this big figure in Irish mythology, a great hero. It's about his son who, his mom slept with Cuchulainn and got pregnant, and then he abandoned her, and she raised her son on her own. And when he comes to adulthood, he decides to go challenge his father. And he goes and challenges his father, but and his father kills him. And in the end of the poem, Cuchulainn falls into despair, goes berserk and mad, and ends up trying to fight the ocean. And so you can think about how might that connect to colonialism? I'm not sure if this is where Yeats was going, but to kind of think about, is he saying that fighting the English and trying to kick them out of Ireland is like fighting the ocean, that it's almost fruitless, that we're never going to succeed, in which case that's a pretty despairing place to be. And that leads us into the Carleton, sorry, I'll just say one thing about the Carleton. If you decide to read it, the main thing to know about the Carleton is that it's supposed to be funny. My class usually doesn't get that. It's satire written by a Protestant about the Catholics and all the things that Catholics do when, like, kneeling and flagellating themselves and whatever else. And he's mocking them. But Carleton was actually someone who had meant to be a Catholic priest. And there's a way in which he does respect the Catholics, and is angry at his own people. And you see that at the end of this piece of the story, where he's angry at the priests who are mocking the Catholics, who are speaking in Latin that they don't understand. And Carleton, the author, is saying this is terrible, this is hypocritical of them. They're standing here with the sort of body of Christ in the silver pyx in their hands and laughing at the congregants. And so there's a sort of, he seems like he's making fun of the Catholics for most of the story, but at the end, who he's really angriest with are these colonial Protestant priests, which is kind of more who he is. So he's kind of angry at himself. And you can kind of connect that language issue back to the Hyde necessity of de-Anglicizing Ireland. Okay, I hope that's helpful as an overview. I know there's a lot of different readings here, and I wanted to give you a sense of what they are. The last thing is this Kaylee project. So usually we do this in class and we all go around the room and take turns. We can't do that. So we're posting them to the Slack channel. Your assignment is to go online. You can go to the library. You can do it through Google, whatever works for you, and look for Irish revolutionary poems and songs. You should find a ton. It shouldn't be difficult. This was a huge part of the Irish cultural heritage. It was how they motivated people and brought community together. And so we're going to do a little bit of that. Nice mid-semester break, hopefully, a little bit of a change from everything we've been doing so far. And you'll share that with the class. So you can sing a song, which I did, and I'm posting that to the Slack. You can recite a poem. You can play an Irish piece on a musical instrument. Whatever you do, you should write a short analysis, a little intro to the piece, and connect it. So, a couple paragraphs is great, just something to show why this is relevant to the colonial topics of the class. Okay, I think that's it. If you have any questions, ask me on Slack. And I'm working on your quizzes. I think probably it'll be Thursday before I get them back to you, but very soon, hopefully. Okay, bye guys.